Welcome back to the deep dive. You guys have sent us a ton of stuff about Michael Jackson and Diddy, court documents, articles, social media posts, and it all feels like something out of like a crazy movie.
It really is a fascinating story with a lot of layers to it. We're talking music history, of course, but then there are also these allegations of abuse, these crazy high-profile parties, and even some political connections. It's a lot to unpack.
Where do we even start with something like this? There's so many big names and rumors flying around. It's kind of overwhelming.
Well, the source material really focuses on Diddy and the world that he built up around himself. So I think that's the best place to start. You've probably heard about his parties, right?
Oh, yeah. Everyone's heard about Diddy's parties, but
Okay.
we're not talking about some casual get-together here. These were legendary.
Exactly. These are the kind of parties that other celebrities wanted to be seen at. Like even Michael Jackson himself crashed one back in 2002.
He crashed a Diddy party. Seriously.
Oh, yeah. Diddy actually talked about it on David Letterman. He said that Jackson just showed up at his MTV Awards party completely out of the blue.
Wow. So what happened? Did they like party together or something?
Well, according to Diddy, Jackson pulled him aside at one point and whispered, "Where's Beyonce?"
Like Beyonce was at these parties too.
She was, and this actually wasn't the only time that Jackson was interested in her. Some sources say that he was seen flirting with her at the World Music Awards a few years later in 2006.
That's wild. It's crazy to think about all these huge music icons in one room together. But it makes you wonder what was so special about these parties. What was it actually like to be on the inside of Diddy's world?
That's a great question, and luckily the material you sent includes a few first-hand accounts from people who were at these parties. And let me tell you, the picture they paint is both exciting and kind of disturbing.
Like Usher, for example. He was going to these parties when he was super young, right?
Right. Usher has said that Diddy actually became his legal guardian when he was only 13 years old. By 14, he was going to these parties.
14 years old. That's so young to be exposed to what Usher was describing. He's hinted at a culture of, sex, women, and drugs. And even though he hasn't gone into detail about what happened, you can tell that those experiences really stuck with him.
And on top of that, there are even allegations from Diddy's former bodyguard, Gene Deal.
What did he say?
Well, Deal claims that Diddy physically abused Usher at one of these parties, badly enough to put him in the hospital.
Seriously?
Yeah, and supposedly this happened when Usher was still a teenager.
Wow. To think that this alleged abuse was going on at the same time that Diddy was building relationships with people like Barack Obama, it's really unsettling. It makes you think about power and influence in a whole new way.
Absolutely, and that intersection of entertainment power and politics is something we see over and over again in the material you sent in. It's like Diddy was living this double life, you know? On the one side, you've got these wild parties where anything goes, and on the other side, he's carefully building relationships with important people, politicians from both parties, too.
Yeah, it's almost like those parties were strategic, a way for him to build his image and influence. But if these stories about Usher are true, it all seems so much darker. Then you start to wonder, did his political connections help him keep things quiet?
That's what a lot of people are wondering, especially with some of the other allegations that have come out. Like there's this lawsuit from a guy named Rodney Jones.
Okay.
Jones claims that Diddy used his head of security to silence people, make problems go away.
And who was this head of security?
A man named Fahim Muhammad.
Wait, Fahim Muhammad. I feel like I've heard that name before.
You probably have. He was Michael Jackson's head of security, too.
No way. You're telling me the same guy who was allegedly covering up stuff for Diddy was working for Michael Jackson?
Yep. And if you remember, he was actually there the night that Jackson died.
Oh, wow. Okay, this is getting kind of creepy.
Huh.
It makes sense that people come up with conspiracy theories about all of this. You've got Diddy, this powerful guy with possible ties to intimidation tactics, and the same guy is in charge of Michael Jackson's security right before he dies under mysterious circumstances.
It's true. There are a lot of strange coincidences there. But we do have to remember that Jackson's death was ruled a homicide. His doctor, Conrad Murray, was convicted of involuntary manslaughter.
Right.
But even with that information, the fact that Fahim Muhammad was there, his connection to Diddy and these new allegations, well, it makes you wonder if there's something more to the story.
I get that. It's like we're looking at a puzzle with some of the pieces missing. We can see the potential connections, but without all the information, it's hard to get the full picture.
And that's why we have to be so careful about jumping to conclusions. It's easy to get caught up in the sensational stuff, but we need to focus on separating fact from fiction and understanding how complex this whole situation really is.
So how do we even begin to do that? Where do we go from here? We're trying to avoid falling down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole.
So when it comes to Diddy and Michael Jackson, What are the key things we should be focusing on? You know, it's really interesting to me. This whole Michael Jackson connection, even before his death, Jackson was a controversial figure, right? I mean, there were accusations, the legal battles, the media scrutiny. So why would Diddy even want to be associated with him? Wasn't he worried about hurting his own image?
I think that's a question a lot of people have asked. Some people think that Diddy saw it as a business opportunity. You know, a chance to work with a music legend, maybe get access to his fan base. Others think that their relationship might have been more personal than we realize, but the truth is the source material doesn't give us a clear answer.
Yeah, and it's not like we can just ask them now, especially with all the rumors that have been going around since Jackson's death. Like, remember when Charlemagne, the God basically said that Diddy was behind Jackson's downfall?
Oh yeah, Charlemagne's comments definitely stirred things up.
What did he say again? Well, he was talking about how Jackson was a target because of how much power and influence he had in the music industry, especially when it came to music publishing rights. Those are worth a lot of money, you know?
Right. So he was implying that Diddy wanted that power for himself.
He didn't actually say Diddy's name out loud, but he heavily implied that Diddy or someone like him with the ambition, the money and the connections could have benefited from Jackson being out of the picture.
I mean, that's a pretty serious accusation.
It is. And it's important to remember that it's just an accusation, not a proven fact.
Of course. But it's hard not to think about it, especially with Fahim Muhammad being there when Jackson died.
Yeah, that whole thing is definitely strange. As head of security, Muhammad was supposed to be looking out for Jackson, keeping him safe.
And then Jackson dies while he's on duty.
Right. It's unsettling. But again, we have to go back to the official findings. Jackson's death was ruled a homicide, and his doctor was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. Still, Muhammad's presence at the scene, his later connection to Diddy, and all those allegations about him silencing people, it just adds another layer of mystery to the whole thing.
So where does that leave us? Do we have any real answers about Diddy's involvement in Jackson's life and death?
To be honest, not really. We have a lot of threads, some more believable than others, but no hard evidence to tie it all together. We're left with this feeling that there's more to the story than we know.
It's like we've stumbled into a real-life thriller.
Yeah.
You know, there are whispers of conspiracies, these powerful people operating in the shadows, and a tragic ending that nobody can fully explain.
And like any good thriller, it leaves us with more questions than answers. Did Diddy have something to do with Michael Jackson's downfall? Was Fahim Muhammad involved in something darker than we know? These are questions we may never have definitive answers to, but that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Yeah. What a story. It really makes you think about what goes on behind the scenes in the music industry, the power, the money, the secrets. Anyway, big thanks everyone for listening. And remember to send us your thoughts and theories. We might even feature them on a future episode. Until next time, keep digging for the truth.